Picture this. You're standing in a crowded room. People are talking, laughing, moving freely, but you're not really there. You're present, yet invisible. Every word you might say gets rehearsed and rewritten in your mind a dozen times before it ever touches your lips. Every movement feels unnatural. Every glance feels judged. Your heart beats too fast, your palms are damp, and a quiet thought keeps whispering, "They're all noticing you." But they're not, because the truth is, they're too busy with their own noise. And yet, that realization doesn't make it easier, does it? Because social anxiety isn't a tea about logic. It's about a war between your mind, as awareness, and your body, as panic. It is about a man who learned long ago that the world was not a safe place to be seen. You tell yourself you're just shy, just introverted. But deep down, you know it's more than that. You avoid parties, meetings, even simple phone calls, not because you hate people, but because being around them feels like being under a microscope. You sense judgment before it happens. You apologize before you've even done anything wrong. You replay conversations in your head at night, dissecting every word for hidden mistakes. And by morning, you've already decided it's safer to stay quiet. But here's the truth that no one ever told you. Social anxiety isn't weakness. It's a defense mechanism. The body's learned response to emotional danger. Somewhere in your life, your nervous system learned that connection meant risk, that being visible meant being hurt, that speaking up meant being rejected. And now, even when you're safe, your body still flinches like it remembers the pain. You see, a man with social anxiety isn't antisocial. He's hyper-aware. He reads faces like maps. He senses tone shifts that others miss. He's been rejected once, maybe twice, and decided never again. So he builds walls. Walls made of silence. Walls made of observation. Walls that protect him, but also imprison him. What's tragic is that most people will never notice. They'll just call him distant, aloof, mysterious. They'll say he doesn't try hard enough, that he's cold or arrogant. But inside he's screaming for ease, for the ability to exist without overthinking his own existence. And if you're that man, the one who overanalyzes every handshake, every word, every look, then what I'm about to tell you isn't about shame. It's about understanding. Because what you're dealing with isn't just fear of people. It's fear of yourself in front of people. And that's what we're going to uncover. Social anxiety isn't born overnight. It's sculpted, slowly, quietly, over years of micro-wounds that most people never see. Maybe it started in childhood, when every time you spoke, someone corrected you, when your ideas were dismissed, when you learned that speaking up brought embarrassment instead of approval. And so the child that once reached out began to withdraw. Psychologists call it conditioned inhibition. Your brain learned to associate exposure with pain. To protect you, it built an invisible wall between you and the world. A wall made not of stone, but of adrenaline, shame, and self-doubt. As a man, you were taught to hide that fear. Because fear doesn't look good on men. You were told to be confident, assertive, dominant, the one who leads the room, not the one who avoids it. And so you put on a mask. A calm, detached, I'm fine kind of mask. You smile when required. You nod when expected. But beneath that still surface, your heart feels like a thunderstorm waiting for permission to be quiet. That's the paradox of social anxiety in men. The world demands strength from those who are silently fighting their own biology. Because anxiety isn't a weakness of character. It's a survival pattern burned into your nervous system. The brain behind the fear. When you enter a social situation, your amygdala, the fear center of your brain, lights up like a siren. It scans the room not for friends, but for threats. Every expression becomes data. Was that a frown? Was she judging me? Did I say something wrong? Even neutral faces feel hostile. Your prefrontal cortex, the rational part of your brain, tries to argue back. Relax, you're safe. But the amygdala doesn't speak reason. It speaks emotion. And emotion always wins the argument. This neurological tug-of-war is exhausting. That's why after any social event you feel drained. Not because you hate people, but because your brain treats every interaction like survival training. It's dopamine versus cortisol. Connection releases dopamine, pleasure, warmth, belonging. But anxiety floods you with cortisol, stress, vigilance, fight or flight. Two chemical messengers waging war inside one man who just wanted to fit in. The inner monologue. If someone could hear your inner thoughts during a simple conversation, it might sound like this. Did I just interrupt him? Why did I say that? That was stupid. He looked away. He's bored. I knew this would happen. I should leave before I embarrass myself more. That's social anxiety. The constant self-surveillance, the hyper-awareness that never rests. It's not arrogance, it's self-consciousness turned toxic. You don't see yourself from within, you see yourself from outside, through an imaginary audience's eyes. In psychology, this is called the spotlight effect, the belief that everyone notices you, that your every misstep is magnified. But the truth is, people rarely notice even 10% of what you think they do. Still, your mind won't accept that, because anxiety isn't cured by facts, it's soothed by safety, and safety is what you've been missing, the masculine cost of silence. For a man, silence is often interpreted as strength, but when silence is born from fear, it becomes isolation. You stop initiating conversations, stop forming friendships, stop taking risks, because invisibility feels safer than rejection. And yet deep down there's a craving, a primal longing to connect, to be seen without being dissected. That's what most people don't understand about men with social anxiety. They want connection more than anyone. They just don't trust it anymore. Society tells men, be confident, speak up, take charge. But no one teaches them how to do that when their nervous system is wired for defense. So they retreat into digital worlds, gaming, YouTube, quiet routines, places where they can control the narrative, where no one interrupts, where rejection can be muted with a click. And that retreat, though comforting, comes at a cost. Because social anxiety doesn't disappear when you isolate. It metastasizes. It grows in silence. It rewires your identity until you start believing, maybe I'm just not built for people. But that's a lie. No man is born broken. You were born to connect. It's biology. Oxytocin, serotonin, dopamine. Your brain is designed for belonging. Social anxiety hijacks that design. It makes connection feel dangerous. It makes peace feel undeserved. The hidden origins. Every man's anxiety has an origin story. For some, it's humiliation. The day they froze during a school presentation. The laughter that burned into memory. For others, it's rejection. A friend who drifted away. A woman who made fun of his awkwardness. A father who dismissed his emotions. And for some, it's trauma. Subtle, quiet trauma that told them, you're too much. Be less. Over time, those experiences become internalized voices. You stop needing external critics because your mind becomes one. You police your own emotions, you censor your own presence. And before you realize it, your personality becomes an edited version of who you really are. This isn't cowardice. It's self-preservation. Because for a man who's been emotionally punished for showing himself, the only safe version to present is the quiet one, the behavior patterns. If you look closely, you'll notice the patterns. You rehearse conversations in your head before they happen. You overthink texts, then delete them. You say sorry too often, even when you've done nothing wrong. You walk into a room and scan for exits instead of people. You avoid eye contact, not because you're rude, but because it feels too intimate. You keep your phone out in public pretending to scroll, a shield against interaction. And when you finally talk, your voice trembles, not from weakness, but from adrenaline. Every one of those behaviors is a strategy, an unconscious attempt to minimize perceived threat. They worked once, they kept you safe, but now they keep you small. The body keeps the score. Anxiety isn't just mental, it's physical. Your body remembers what your mind tries to forget. That tightness in your chest, that's your sympathetic nervous system preparing for attack. That shallow breathing, your body rationing air for a sprint that never comes. That exhaustion after a simple social event, That's the cost of living on red alert. When you live like that long enough, your body begins to confuse safety with danger. You can be sitting in a cafe surrounded by friendly faces and still feel like prey. And here's the cruel irony. Your calm, detached exterior fools everyone, including yourself. No one sees the storm. But storms that stay unseen only grow stronger. The mask and the man over time, you start wearing the mask so well that even you forget it's there. You become the quiet guy, the serious one, the observer. People respect you, but they don't know you. They admire your calm, but they don't see the cost of maintaining it. And when someone does get close, a friend, a woman, you feel both drawn to them and terrified by them. You crave connection yet flinch from it. Because love, to a socially anxious man, is the ultimate exposure. It demands vulnerability. And vulnerability feels like walking naked into the same fire that once burned you. The cycle of avoidance. Social anxiety feeds on avoidance. Every time you dodge an interaction, your brain learns, good, we survived. And that relief becomes addictive. Soon, avoiding becomes your default coping mechanism. But avoidance is deceptive. It feels like control, but it's surrender in disguise. The more you avoid, the more the anxiety grows. And the more it grows, the more you avoid. It's a loop, a psychological prison built by the very system meant to protect you. Breaking that loop isn't about forcing confidence. It's about retraining safety. Your nervous system needs proof, real, lived experiences, that you can be seen and still survive, that you can speak and not be humiliated, that you can exist without apologizing for it. Case study: the man who stayed silent. Let me tell you about someone. Let's call him Daniel. Daniel was brilliant, creative, deep thinker, but every time he had to speak in meetings, his throat tightened, his mind went blank. He'd leave each session feeling worthless, convinced everyone thought he was incompetent. He avoided team lunches, skipped gatherings, made excuses. His colleagues thought he was distant, but the truth was simpler. He was afraid of exposure. In therapy, Daniel learned something profound, that his anxiety wasn't random, it was learned. He grew up in a home where mistakes were mocked, not corrected. He learned early that silence meant safety. So as an adult, he used silence like armor. But the same armor that kept him safe also kept him unseen. When he began to face small exposures, a one-on-one conversation, a short comment in a meeting, his body trembled. But over time, his brain began to rewrite the code. I can speak and still be safe. That's the quiet revolution of healing social anxiety. It's not about becoming fearless. It's about becoming free. Reframing the narrative social anxiety tells you, everyone is judging you. But what if that's not true? What if they're too busy judging themselves? What if most people are too consumed by their own insecurities to even notice yours? The moment you realize that, really feel it, something shifts. Because confidence isn't the absence of fear, it's the decision to act despite it. It's telling your nervous system, we've been here before and we survived. That's what healing looks like for men like you. Not shouting over the noise, but learning to stand inside it without flinching. Not pretending to be fearless, but being honest about your fear and walking anyway. That's courage. Not the movie kind. The real kind. Let's go deeper. Because social anxiety in men isn't just about fear. It's about identity. It's about who you think you are when the world is watching. For most men, identity is built on control. Control of image, control of voice, control of outcome. But anxiety shatters that illusion. It strips you of the mask of certainty and exposes what's underneath, the raw, unfiltered version of you that doesn't know how to belong. And that's terrifying. Because somewhere along the way, men were taught that to be loved, they must be impressive. They must be funny, confident, capable, but never awkward, never nervous, never unsure. So when a man with social anxiety steps into a room, he's not just battling fear, he's battling the internalized belief that his anxious self is unworthy of love. That if people saw the trembling hands, the unsure smile, the hesitations, they'd turn away. He's not afraid of people. He's afraid of being seen as small. The hidden philosophy of social anxiety. Here's a thought that most psychologists miss. Social anxiety isn't purely a mental disorder. It's also a philosophical crisis. It's the collision between your authentic self and your ideal self, between who you are and who you think you must be to be accepted. Your mind says, be natural, but your body says, don't make a mistake. Your heart says, connect, but your ego whispers, don't risk rejection. You're torn between exposure and preservation, and both sides demand loyalty. This is why it feels like you're always at war with yourself. Because you are. It's not just social fear, it's existential tension. The tension between wanting to belong and wanting to protect your dignity. Between needing others and fearing their judgment. Between speaking your truth and staying invisible. And when that tension becomes unbearable, you choose silence. Because silence feels safe. But silence, my friend, also kills you slowly. The mirror problem. There's another dimension to this. The mirror. You see, social anxiety makes you painfully self-aware. Too aware. You begin living not as yourself, but as a reflection of what others might think. Every gesture, every tone, every glance runs through an invisible filter. How do I look? How am I being perceived? You stop living from within and start performing from without. You stop being the subject of your life and become its object. And that's why everything feels artificial. Why conversations drain you. Because you're not actually in them. You're observing yourself being in them. The philosopher Jean-Paul Sartre called this the look of the other. He said that when we become aware of being seen, we lose our freedom. We start living for the gaze of others and forget how to live for ourselves. That's social anxiety in philosophical form. You exist, but only through the eyes of others. You breathe, but never freely. Let's go deeper. Because social anxiety in men isn't just about fear. It's about identity. It's about who you think you are when the world is watching. For most men, identity is built on control. Control of image, control of voice, control of outcome. But anxiety shatters that illusion. It strips you of the mask of certainty and exposes what's underneath. The raw, unfiltered version of you that doesn't know how to belong. And that's terrifying. Because somewhere along the way, men were taught that to be loved, they must be impressive. They must be funny, confident, capable, but never awkward, never nervous, never unsure. So when a man with social anxiety steps into a room, he's not just battling fear, he's battling the internalized belief that his anxious self is unworthy of love. That if people saw the trembling hands, the unsure smile, the hesitations, they'd turn away. He's not afraid of people. He's afraid of being seen as small. The hidden philosophy of social anxiety. Here's a thought that most psychologists miss. Social anxiety isn't purely a mental disorder. It's also a philosophical crisis. It's the collision between your authentic self and your ideal self. Between who you are and who you think you must be to be accepted. Your mind says, be natural. But your body says, don't make a mistake. Your heart says, connect. But your ego whispers, don't risk rejection. You're torn between exposure and preservation, and both sides demand loyalty. This is why it feels like you're always at war with yourself. Because you are. It's not just social fear, it's existential tension. The tension between wanting to belong and wanting to protect your dignity. Between needing others and fearing their judgment. Between speaking your truth and staying invisible. And when that tension becomes unbearable, you choose silence. Because silence feels safe. But silence, my friend, also kills you slowly. The mirror problem. There's another dimension to this. The mirror. You see, social anxiety makes you painfully self-aware. Too aware. You begin living not as yourself, but as a reflection of what others might think. Every gesture, every tone, every glance runs through an invisible filter. How do I look? How am I being perceived? You stop living from within and start performing from without. You stop being the subject of your life and become its object. And that's why everything feels artificial. Why conversations drain you. Because you're not actually in them. You're observing yourself being in them. The philosopher Jean-Paul Sartre called this the look of the other. He said that when we become aware of being seen, we lose our freedom. We start living for the gaze of others and forget how to live for ourselves. That's social anxiety in philosophical form. You exist, but only through the eyes of others. You breathe, but never freely. Masculinity and the myth of ease men are taught that confidence should come naturally, that dominance is instinctive, that you should walk into a room and own it. But what if confidence isn't natural? What if it's practiced, earned through discomfort, not granted by birth? The tragedy is that men who struggle with social anxiety often hide it the most. They fear being perceived as weak, emotional, or not man enough, so they suffer in silence, stoic on the outside, unraveling on the inside. And society applauds their composure, not realizing it's made of glass. But here's the truth. There's nothing unmanly about anxiety, because real masculinity isn't the absence of fear, it is the willingness to face it. It's not domination, it's courage. And courage isn't loud. It's quiet persistence. It's showing up even when your hands shake. A man who can walk through fear without pretending it doesn't exist. That's not weakness. That's mastery. The cost of hyper-awareness. Social anxiety gives you a strange gift. Perception. You notice everything. Tone, posture, micro-expressions. You can sense when someone's energy shifts, when tension fills a room. You read between lines that others can't even see. It's a superpower, until it turns inward. Because when that sensitivity turns on yourself, it becomes torment. You start analyzing your own breathing, your own voice, your own existence. You become both actor and critic in your own play, performing while reviewing yourself in real time. That's why social anxiety is exhausting. It is not that you cannot socialize. It is that you cannot stop monitoring yourself while doing it. And that self-surveillance kills authenticity. You stop laughing freely, you stop speaking spontaneously, you stop living naturally. But here's the irony. People are drawn to authenticity, not perfection. The very thing you've been hiding, your nervousness, your quiet, your vulnerability, is what makes you human. And humanity is magnetic. When you allow people to see your flaws, they see themselves. And suddenly, connection doesn't feel so dangerous. The turning point healing begins the moment you stop trying to be confident and start trying to be honest. Honest about your discomfort. Honest about your fear. Honest about the armor you've been wearing. Because the path out of social anxiety isn't about becoming someone new. It's about remembering who you were before the fear. The child who laughed too loud. The boy who asked questions without shame. The man who still exists beneath the layers of self-doubt. Every time you face a social fear, every time you speak up, make eye contact, walk into a room despite your heartbeat, you're not just acting brave. You're rewiring your brain. You're teaching your nervous system that visibility doesn't equal danger. That connection doesn't equal rejection. That you can exist without shrinking. The quiet revolution. One of the most powerful truths about social anxiety is this. Your healing won't come in a single grand transformation. It will come in micro moments, small acts of rebellion against your fear. Ordering coffee without rehearsing it. Asking someone about their day and not overanalyzing the tone of their reply. Sharing an opinion, even if your voice shakes. Each of those moments rewrites your story. Each moment tells your body, I am safe. And slowly the cage becomes a door. The silence becomes voice. The mask becomes unnecessary. You won't wake up one day cured, but you'll notice something subtle. The world won't feel as loud. Your body won't brace itself so quickly. You'll stop rehearsing conversations in your head because you'll realize you don't need to perform anymore. You just need to be. And maybe that's the final truth. The opposite of anxiety isn't confidence, it's presence. Because when you're present, you're no longer trapped in what they might think. You're simply living what is. So where does this leave you, my friend? You, the man who thinks too much before he speaks, who walks into a room and feels his chest tighten, who wants to belong but fears the cost of being seen. Let me tell you something that perhaps no one ever has. There is nothing wrong with you. You are not broken. You are a man whose nervous system learned to protect him a little too well, because once upon a time silence saved you. It shielded you from ridicule. It helped you survive environments that punished vulnerability. But now, that same silence that once kept you safe keeps you small, and it's time to outgrow it. Healing doesn't mean waking up fearless, it means waking up willing. Willing to feel the discomfort without running from it. Willing to be awkward, imperfect, human. Because the real power of a man isn't found in how well he hides. It is found in how honestly he shows up. You see, confidence isn't a performance. It's not loud laughter or perfect posture. It's quiet ownership of your breath, your words, your story. It's the calm awareness that says, yes, I'm anxious, but I'm still here. And that, brother, is enough. Start small. Say the thing you usually swallow. Hold eye contact for a second longer than comfort allows. Walk into rooms without armor, even if your hands tremble. Because each time you do, the world doesn't shrink. You expand. And maybe one day, you'll look back and realize that social anxiety was never your enemy. It was your teacher. It showed you how deeply you care about connection. It revealed how much you long to be understood. It forced you to know yourself in a way most men never do. So don't despise the anxious parts of you. Thank them, then lead them. Let them walk beside you, not in front of you. Because the world doesn't need a flawless man. It needs a real one, the kind who still shows up even when his heart races. And when you stand there and in the noise, in the light, in your trembling honesty, you'll finally understand something sacred. The goal was never to be fearless. The goal was to live freely, despite the fear. So take a breath. Straighten your shoulders, and step forward, not as the man you think you should be, but as the man you already are.